My son Daniel has always had the strangest friends. I don't know why, but ever since he was little, he seemed to attract the weird kids. I have plenty of stories about it, but one stands out like a thorn. It happened when he was in fourth grade. We had just moved because of my spouse's job, and Daniel was the new kid at school. He was always outgoing and friendly, so we didn't worry about him making friends. We were settling in well, and everything seemed normal. I first met his classmates' parents a few months after we moved. They all seemed like decent, honest people. Nothing out of the ordinary. That's why it was so surprising when I got a call from the school in the middle of the day. They asked me to come in to discuss an incident involving Daniel and another student. I was confused and a little angry. I figured he'd been in a fight, and if he was the one who started it, he'd be in big trouble. But fighting was completely out of character for Daniel. He'd always been gentle and respectful. As we walked to the principal's office, I tried asking him what happened, but he wouldn't say a word. It was unsettling. He's usually a chatterbox. I chalked it up to embarrassment or fear and let it go. The principal asked Daniel to wait outside while we talked. Once the door closed, he started asking me questions. How does Daniel behave at home? Is he respectful? Does he get into trouble? I told him the truth. Daniel was a good kid, polite, well-behaved, never caused problems. Then the principal told me what happened. Apparently, Daniel got into an altercation with a classmate named Lucas. They were the last two students coming in from recess, walking up the stairs together. Out of nowhere, Daniel pulled an eraser out of his pocket and struck Lucas over the head with it. Lucas fell to the ground, screaming. I was stunned. That didn't sound like Daniel at all. I knew he was friends with Lucas. He talked about him all the time. Why would he do something like that? I asked if there were any witnesses, but no one had seen it happen. Both boys had given matching accounts of the incident. The principal assured me Daniel wasn't in serious trouble since no one was badly hurt. He just wanted to make me aware of the situation. I was relieved but still confused. Daniel stayed silent the whole way home, which was so unlike him. It wasn't until bedtime that he finally opened up. He told me Lucas had tricked him. They were playing make-believe Street Fighter, and Lucas told him to use the eraser as a KO move. Daniel went along with it. But the second he did, Lucas collapsed, pretending to be hurt. Then he leaned in and whispered that he'd make Daniel's life miserable if he didn't pretend it was a real attack. I was furious. My son had been set up. I wanted to march down to the school, but instead I decided to handle it myself. I found Lucas's mom's number in the school directory and gave her a call. Her name was Olivia, and she was incredibly sweet on the phone. She told me she already knew about the incident and had reprimanded Lucas. I was surprised he'd admitted to it so quickly, but I was glad it was resolved. Then Olivia said something that stuck with me. She mentioned that Lucas sometimes acted like another person entirely and that he had minor behavioral issues. She sounded so genuine and even suggested the boys have a sleepover to patch things up. I thought it was a good idea, a chance for them to make amends. That weekend, I took Daniel to their house. Olivia welcomed us warmly, and the boys ran off to play in the basement. We chatted over a glass of wine, and she seemed like an honest, caring mom. At some point, I asked about Lucas's behavior. Her face darkened, and she spoke quietly. She admitted he'd seen doctors and that they thought he might grow out of it. She assured me he was harmless, just odd sometimes. I believed her. She seemed so sincere, and the boys were laughing and playing downstairs without a care in the world. I said goodbye to Daniel and went home. The next morning, I went to pick him up. He was smiling when I arrived, but the moment we drove away, he burst into tears. I asked him what was wrong, and his story made my blood run cold. He said everything was fine until they went to bed. They set up air mattresses side by side in the basement. Sometime in the middle of the night, Daniel woke up. At first, he didn't know why, but then he heard whispering. It was coming from the bathroom. The door was cracked open, and a flickering light spilled out, not the glow of a nightlight. Daniel said it looked more like candlelight. He crept closer, and that's when he heard Lucas talking. But he was calling himself Mr. Gray. Daniel froze. Lucas was having a full conversation with the mirror, like someone was answering back. His voice changed, deeper and slower. Daniel said it didn't even sound like English. Then the candle went out. The basement was dark and silent. Daniel was too terrified to move. He squeezed his eyes shut and pretended to sleep. Minutes passed. Then the bathroom door creaked open. He heard whispering again, right above him. Cold breath on his face, words he didn't understand. He was paralyzed with fear, unable to open his eyes. After what felt like an eternity, the whispering stopped, and he heard Lucas climb back into bed. The next morning, Lucas acted completely normal, as if nothing happened. Daniel was too scared to ask him about it. I was horrified. I called Olivia, and at first she laughed it off. But as I pressed her, her voice trembled. She admitted that Lucas's behavioral issues were more serious than she let on. One doctor suggested it could be a personality disorder. I was furious. Why hadn't she warned me? Then she begged me not to tell the school. I reluctantly agreed, but before I could decide what to do, everything changed. On Monday, Lucas attacked another student at recess. It was serious enough that he got expelled. I tried calling Olivia, but her number was disconnected. I drove to their house, but it was completely empty. No signs of moving out, just gone. I tried searching for them online, but it was like they never existed. No records, no forwarding address, nothing. That was years ago. Daniel doesn't remember much about it, but I do. I still wonder who or what was whispering to my son that night, and where Mr. Gray is now.